First story. Should I, 47M, leave my wife, 37F? Strap in for a doozy. To give some much-needed context to this situation, I, 47M, met my now wife, 37F, via a dating app in late 2015. We spoke for a month before meeting in person for the first time, where I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said yes, and we were long distance for 3 years before moving in together in 2018. I moved away from my family and friends, and we found a house in the same town she was already living. I proposed the following year. And then we got married in 2020 and then started trying for a baby. It took some time, and the pregnancy was very rough for my wife and ended up being a C-section. But our son was born October 2021 and is now nearly 3 years old. This is where things get complicated. Leading up to our wedding, one of the bridesmaid sisters had a boyfriend, 21M, who came to the wedding as their plus one. My wife ended up becoming friends with said boyfriend. A few months after we had gotten married, they were getting closer and people started to comment on it, and me, not wanting to be an overbearing, jealous husband, just passed it off as people of different genders can just be friends, right? Some more context on what I think drove them together is myself and my wife are very introverted people, with her being slightly more outgoing. I prefer to stay home rather than go out, and on my part, may have not been putting in enough effort on organizing dates outside of the house. My impression at the time was that we enjoyed doing things at home, and now she had a friend to go do outdoor things with. They got closer over time, and were best friends during the time we were trying for a baby. People would keep commenting, and I would brush it off to try and be supportive of her having a close friend, as she had in the past struggled to make friends, which I could relate to. They clashed heads quite a lot, and I would often be a shoulder to cry on, and at one point they stopped being friends altogether, and given how upset she was, seemed almost like a breakup. They became friends again, and one night, whilst they were out together, I had seen she had not logged out of Facebook, and stupidly decided to snoop on their messages. It revealed he was in love with her, and that she had developed feelings too, but was not acting on them because of me. I confronted her about this, and she had said he had confessed before, and she had turned him down, causing them to stop being friends. But they had become friends again on the understanding that it would be just friends. But she too then developed feelings. I wanted to trust her, so left it at that. Come October 2021, close to Halloween, our son had been born, and my work were going out for a few drinks after we did a quiz in the office. We ended up meeting with my wife, my sister-in-law, the best friend, and a few others. Despite my usual dislike for places like clubs, I somehow was there in the mix of alcohol and the whispers of colleagues and friends in my ear about how the best friend was being too close with my wife stoked up a rage in me. This came to a head when my friends and colleagues were making an effort to split my wife and the best friend up and to bring my wife and I together. This upset the best friend, and he was going to leave the club. My wife followed. And one more comment about how I should go after too, because it wasn't right. It set my rage over the edge. And I went down and saw them sitting on a sofa embracing in a goodbye, which to my angry drunk mind was too much. I told the best friend it was time to leave, and he got up, and then I punched him in the face. We got separated by the club staff, and I left the club very quickly and walked all the way home, suddenly very sober. The next few days revealed more of their relationship. My wife convinced him not to call the police on me, and she was up in the air about leaving me because my punching of him put into question how safe I was as a person. Mind, I had never punched anyone before, and I hate confrontation, as you'll see more in this post. She had revealed that whilst they had not engaged in full-on sex, they had been intimate in other ways, but had stopped once she was heavily pregnant with our son. She had been feeling guilty for a while, and they had not resumed what they were doing once our son was born. She had said that she had been unfaithful and that the trust was gone. I wanted to stay together and rebuild our trust because I still very much loved her and wanted my son to have a family that was whole. We talked it out and agreed to stay together, and that she would go back to being actual friends with the best friend who during all this was trying to convince her to leave me and be with him instead, which was not plausible anyway as he lived with his parents and currently had no job so could not provide for anyone. A few days after the whole ordeal, myself, my wife and him all had a conversation, and he presented her with an ultimatum: him or me. My wife is notorious for being terrible at communication. It can be very difficult to get any kind of response out of her. She just wants you to do all the talking and figure out what you want, but the best friend wanted to hear it from her, specifically him or me. We sat and wait for a while in silence. She chose me in silence, but he wanted her to say it out loud that she was done with him romantically, and she eventually did, and I thought that was the end of it. The best friend and I shared a weird hug. I'm not quite sure why, maybe some subconscious apology to me for how he had come into our lives and turned it all upside down. Despite my wife saying she was done with him romantically, they remained friends, but not for long. My wife was continuously guilty because she would occasionally slip up and kiss him. Me being the dolt, I am excused these mess-ups for the sake of trying to keep our relationship intact and our family whole. A few months after this, she broached the subject of an open relationship, a way she could have all she wanted with none of the guilt or consequences. I could see she was struggling. We were both very tired from looking after a baby, and she had suffered very hard with postnatal depression, and had suffered depression at the start of our relationship and prior. She had gotten a lot better and was off her medication by the time we were engaged and getting married, but the pregnancy plus this whole weird love triangle had brought her right back. So being the idiot I was, agreed to an open relationship to make her happy. This open relationship lasted until around April of this year. She was happy having her family life with husband and child with me, and then her outgoing fun part of life with the best friend. I did not see another woman during this, as I was committed to my wife, even if she wasn't fully committed to me. My main reasoning for sticking this out was mostly for the sake of my son. I wanted him to have a proper family, and I just wanted a simple family life. The other part was fear or shame. If I left, it would all come out and everyone would know. I have a good relationship with my in-laws, and my family is currently planning to move down to where we are because they want to spend more time with my son. If I leave, it will ruin so many relationships, and I fear the blame will be on me for not stopping it sooner, so I soldiered on even though I was miserable most of the time. I did it for my son and my family, so they might be happy, and seeing them happy would help me forget or at least block it out. So during this whole open relationship, whilst our side was fine, we had family trips and holidays, and my wife and I were still able to be intimate with each other in the very rare times that our child allowed us to be. She wasted no time having sex with the best friend. They would go out in the evenings a few times a week and sometimes away for weekends together. He did not like hearing my name even being mentioned, so when they were together, I'm sure they pretended like I didn't exist. They had even taken our son for day trips to farms and soft play when I was working. And that is one of the few times I had the guts to say something and say that he was my son, and that the family stuff should remain with the actual family. Myself hearing his name was quite the opposite whenever they fought or had some kind of disagreement. I was the shoulder to cry on, and the empathetic listener, as any suggestions fell on deaf ears. Whenever I felt close to caving and leaving, my son would float into my mind, and it would stop me every time. In April, this all came to a head. She had said they'd been fighting more and more. He was spending more time on his phone when he was with her, and this resulted in her half-heartedly breaking up with him to try and rouse something out of him. But he took her at her word and broke up with her. She backpedaled and tried getting him back, but he ended up going no contact with her. She was inconsolable for weeks, and I was there as always to pick up the pieces. Whilst she was physically ill and cried, I and her parents looked after my son. She had attempted a few more times to reach out to him, and each time this relapsed her progress in getting over him. She had even tried to go back to being just friends, but either he couldn't do that or didn't want to. They had met a few times with my son as some kind of intermediary to force them to not be intimate, if such a feeling arose, but after that he said he couldn't be just friends and fully cut her off again, and she blocked him on everything. I finally felt some sense of relief, like my efforts had been rewarded somehow, that in by staying I now finally had my family back, and we could all move on and my life would finally be normal again. Now it is almost September. She, to take her mind off of him, has gotten into writing spiritual journals and has also started her own business. She was in childcare before going full stay-at-home mom, but she is now using her qualifications from childcare for her own business, and it has been doing very well. I've been very supportive and even helped with purchasing a domain, setting emails and a website. My issue now is I don't think she loves me the same anymore. The last time she and the best friend were intimate is when she was very emotionally vulnerable. And going off what she said, he took advantage of this, and they had sex before he then dumped her. This had a factor in her being physically ill, but she had wanted to be intimate with me again, so that the last time she had sex wasn't that time, which understandably was traumatic for her. She had taken the time she needed and we were intimate again. After a few more times of being intimate, she had said she didn't want to have sex anymore and sourced one of her mom friends, as an example, says X and Y don't have sex. It wasn't like we had the chance to be intimate very often, but I always tried to initiate when I thought the time was right. But no became the answer going forwards. I was told sex isn't the whole relationship, and I understood that, but I had communicated that intimacy was part of how I showed love. We have not had sex since, and I cannot get anything more from her than cuddling and a peck on lips type of kiss. I was feeling insecure because of this and tried to discuss this with her, that I felt unhappy and unsure about where we were in the relationship. She had said that things were fine and we were staying together for our son. I said it was more than that for me because I still loved her the same. She had asked if I wanted to split up, and I asked her if she loved me, and she said she did, and as usual my heart was not in it, and I couldn't commit to what would be the harder decision of leaving and decided to stay. I fear she is staying because it's the easy option, or because she has no choice since her other option left her. She may be hopeful that the best friend will return into her life, and then she will leave me. I had asked her if he came back would she leave me for him, and she said she didn't know, it would depend on the situation at the time. I had made my stance clear that if he came back in any form, I was done and would leave. Now I am still feeling just as stuck or trapped as I felt during the open relationship. I am a good husband and father. I stuck with her during her difficult pregnancy. I went to all the scans and appointments post-birth. I've been actively involved with raising my son. I work Monday to Friday, but I take over in the evenings before he goes to bed. I'm cooking most of the time, and when she does cook, it's normally just freezer meals when I'm making meals from scratch with fresh ingredients. Her main gripe, which drove her to the best friend originally, was that we never went on dates outside of the house. But she never expressed this to me, so how could I have known? I said that you should have told me and I could have done something, not gone and slept with someone else and had a whole weird love triangle thing. I am actively trying to put more effort into dates. A lot is going on, so we don't really have a lot of time for date nights out on a whim because we need to organize childcare. I know that wasn't the case before we had a kid, but again, it wasn't communicated to me, and us both being introverted, I thought we were perfectly good at home. COVID lockdowns may not have helped too, but I had attempted a few dates after lockdowns were clear. I feel like now anything I do is just going to be a comparison to the best friend, that I'm only doing it because they were doing it together. Even after everything, I still love my wife. I don't know if it is the same way anymore. I'm actively trying to put an effort in, but I don't think it's being returned. But everything I try and express that we don't get anywhere and continue on going. She has never wanted to be the one to make decisions. She's let this whole thing play out, and it took the best friend making the decision himself for their relationship to end. Does it have to be me that makes the decision here? If I leave, where do either of us go? Where does my son go, and how much more will change or be ruined as a result of my choice? I've had no one to turn to, and I've tossed this whole thing around in my mind for the past few years, thinking, why is it down to me to do this? I let the open relationship happen to avoid consequences and to keep everyone but myself happy, and I'm still doing it now. Can I be happy again, truly happy with my family? If I continue to stick it out and put the effort in, will my wife see me and love me how she used to, or is she too hung up still on the best friend and is waiting for him to come back so she can leave me? Or so I am forced to leave. My priority is my son. I want what's best for him, and I've been content in my misery to be able to see him as much as I do, so happy. If I leave, I may not get to see him as much. I only currently see him after I finish work and on the weekends. I love my wife, and I want her to be happy, but have I sacrificed my feelings for others too much? Is this the one time I've got to put myself first and leave? If you've made this far, thank you. I hope it makes sense. I am very stuck and lost and many other things, and need some help, and I've put off asking for it for too long, either to save myself from a truth I don't want to hear, or to spare my family and friends from all of this. Wife and I been together 8 years, we have a kid, but there was a full-blown affair, or maybe one-sided open relationship from my wife that happened, and I feel stuck and unsure how to feel go forward in the marriage. Update. I don't think I've been so grilled in my life, but boy did I need it. I think I needed to be beaten down from a place outside of my own head for it to really get through without any excuses or justifications being made up in my mind. This is very real, unfortunately. It is very sad and pathetic, and I am very broken and need fixing. Everyone who has said get a paternity test, he is mine. He couldn't look more like me if he tried, but the soon-to-be ex-wife and the other one didn't have sex until he was already born. They were courteous enough to wait for Mr. Doormat to lay down and open the relationship. Of course they could be lying, but I think given she wants to be with him more than me, the child being his would be a good way out. Thank you for the truth and the harsh words. If anyone needs a new doormat, I am clearly a prize to behold. I apologize for the length of the original post. I had so much stored and wanted to air it all out, but for those who read it all, read halfway or didn't read at all but still gave the clear advice of leave, thank you. I do need therapy, and I need to be alone for a while before I can love again. It is coming up to 9 years, and that's a long time, and you could say a lot of time wasted with false hope that things would improve, but I see now it's over. The one good thing to come of it is my son, and I see now staying will do him no good in the long term. I had finished work, picked my son up from my in-laws after having dinner, as she was out for the day with her sibling. I got him ready for bed and read him stories, and he went to sleep. I could not. I kept reopening the original post, looking through the comments, all unanimously saying to leave. Recently, as 30 minutes ago, she came home and I had a brief conversation with her. I said we should split up and she agreed. I said that I hadn't felt respected in a long time, and this felt more like a friendship or roommates than it was a marriage anymore. It felt like I was the safe option to hold on to, not out of love, but for safety and ease. I had thought about all the comments about the effects the continuation this would have on my son, and expressed as much. I had felt walked over and disrespected, and I couldn't raise my son that way. I can't be the father he needs if I am not the man I should be. She left and started to get teary before she left, which I didn't expect, as she had rarely shown much of a care the last time I half attempted to convey my feelings of the relationship. So maybe she does care more than I thought, but not enough to undo everything that's happened. She has gone to sleep at her parents', and I am now alone in my house with my son. Now everything will change, but it will be for the better, however long it takes. I'm gonna try and get some sleep. I'm done and it's over. We will divorce. Second story. My girlfriend told me she was pregnant, so I had arranged to move all her stuff out behind her back. If you only read the title, I might sound like a bad guy, but I'm not. I've known I wanted to be child-free since my early teens. My parents didn't oppose me, but they did say I could change my mind. Since I'm not an only child, they'll still get grandchildren. When I was 20, I got a vasectomy. When I was 22, I met my girlfriend. I've been open about wanting to be child-free from the very beginning. I remember telling her about my vasectomy, but to be honest, I think there was already alcohol involved, so I'm not sure if she remembers. We were dating for a year and a half when she moved in with me. I'm now 25. 2 weeks ago, I got home from work, and my girlfriend was standing in the living room smiling. She showed me the positive pregnancy test. Thinking it was a TikTok prank, I played along. When she didn't reveal it was a prank, I knew what had happened, but I continued playing along. That night, I got up at midnight and started sending emails. I took a week off work and emailed my best friends the details, telling them to pretend they knew nothing and be prepared. The next morning, I left for work as usual, but I didn't go to work. Carl, one of my friends, was waiting outside. He had a cap and a hoodie ready for me. The whole week, we followed Katie, and on day 3, she met up with her affair partner. We followed them to a motel, and then Carl followed him to his home. The guy was married with kids. We devised a plan. I convinced Katie to go to her parents' house to tell them the good news last Saturday. While there, I gave my friends the keys to my home. At Katie's parents' house, we had lunch with the parents and siblings first, and then Katie told them the good news. Everyone was happy. After a while, I got a call I had to take. It was my friends telling me they were done and ready. So I asked to make an announcement. I pulled Katie aside in front of everyone. I bet they thought I was going to propose. I started by telling how we met, how much she meant to me, and ended with, "And that's why it hurt so much that you cheated on me and got pregnant by someone else." The room was silent. Katie looked shocked. She started telling me it wasn't a funny joke. I said, "I'm not joking. The moment you told me you were pregnant, I knew you cheated. I got a vasectomy 5 years ago, and I go to checkups every year. So if you're pregnant, you have cheated." At that moment, her phone rang. I told her to answer it. It was probably AP's full name. You know, the real father of your baby. Probably wants to talk about you moving in. Not sure if his wife and kids are going to like that. What happened was that my friends had loaded up everything of Katie's in a U-Haul and brought it to AP's home. When they called me, they were in front of his home for the final part. They rang the doorbell and asked the AP where they could put her things. He was confused, and they handed him and his wife a folder with pictures of him and Katie. And Carl said, since OP is kicking her out, she needs a place to stay. We're just here delivering her things. And since you don't want the woman who is pregnant with your child to stay on the street, we assumed you would take her in. AP called Katie yelling that she ruined his life and he never wants to see her again. After hearing him scream over the phone, I said, "Oh, so his wife doesn't want his mistress and their affair baby living there. So you'll have to stay here with your parents." With that, I walked away, leaving a crying Katie and her confused and angry family behind. My friends brought the U-Haul with her stuff to her parents' house after the AP refused to accept it. I went home where my sister was waiting for me. She knew everything. This was not part of my plan, but Carl knows me so well. I broke down and cried in my sister's arms. She stayed the weekend taking care of me, allowing me to grieve and process the betrayal.